Hey guys, my name is Zan. If you are new, welcome. If you are returning, hello again. A friend of mine asked me to do a video on this, because they didn't know how to handle talking about this kinds of stuff, so I'm actually going to do a video talking about triggers and trigger warnings and what those are and how to properly handle those. So I accidentally bumped my table. So her question was, how do I talk about trigger warnings without accidentally triggering someone? And she was wondering, do I use indirect language to refer to something, or do I use direct language? So this is my experience with it, and this is kind of what I've seen what works for me particularly, but also some of what works for like a lot of my friends that I know that have triggers. So when you're talking about, okay, I'm actually going to start with what a trigger is. So when somebody has had, past trauma, past abuse, maybe a mental illness of some kind, triggers are those things that will, send them into panic attacks or anxiety attacks, or, if they have psychotic episodes, a trigger can, send them into an episode of psychosis. So like for me, having schizophrenia, I have particular triggers that will send me into psychotic episodes. So triggers are anything that sort of brings about really negative emotions within a person, or a really negative reaction within a person. So the best way to kind of go about this is, if it's a friend and you know that your friend has mental illness or has had past abuse or past trauma, or even if you don't know, like you're getting to know somebody, just ask them, be like, hey, do you have any triggers that I need to be aware of? And, if they say, like, yeah, most of the time we will say, yes, these are my triggers, and list them off. If they don't say what their triggers are, if they just say, yes, I do, and you need to know before you show them something that could potentially be triggering, you might say, are you comfortable with sharing what those are so that I know to be aware of those if I'm going to show you things? That is a super respectful way of asking somebody what their triggers are and getting to know them so that you don't accidentally cross boundaries. Along that line, though, if somebody tells you what their triggers are, do not abuse that. I have had people, when I've told them I am triggered by spiders, will go into like, oh, so if I talk about ... and then they go into really serious detail, like talking about the spiders and aspects of the spiders, like that is an immediate trigger for me and an immediate trigger for my psychosis, which is super disrespectful and absolutely violating, and don't do that. Don't be an asshole. Don't be a dick. So if somebody says, these are my triggers, don't just use that as free rein to bombard them all the time with triggers. Like, that's so not okay. In no world, no universe would that ever be okay. But people do it. So if somebody says, yes, these are my triggers, the other part of my friend's question was, if I know what these triggers are, then how do I say, damn it, I keep bumping into my table. How do I say, that this has a trigger warning? So I use the example of, like, for me, because she knows what my triggers are. So I say she has a video that she wants to show me, but it's got something in it that's one of my triggers. I told her to say, hey, before I show you this, there's a trigger warning in here. And if I ask, okay, what is the trigger? Then she can list, like, it's got spiders and needles, or it's got sexual assault, or, whatever it is that my trigger might be. And then I can decide from there whether or not I want to watch or look at or read or whatever it is. So when you're going about triggers, if you don't know somebody's triggers or what they are, and you haven't, either had a chance to ask or, haven't thought about asking or anything like that, and you come across something, and you just want to say, like, hey, I don't know if this is going to be an issue, but there's potentially some triggering things in here. And leave it vague like that at first, and then if the person is like, okay, what might the issue be, then you can sort of go into a little bit more detail about, it contains references to rape, or it contains references to, like, spiders or snakes, or, whatever the case may be. And then that person from there can decide whether or not it's okay for them to watch. So, generally speaking, if you're tagging something, like on Tumblr or on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and you want to tag a trigger warning, when you tag it, like, I see this a lot in Tumblr, actually, more specifically. When we tag something on Tumblr, we will tag one tag that is trigger warning, and that's all that tag contains. And then in the next tags, we will tag trigger warning spiders, trigger warning snakes, trigger warning whatever, on and on, till we list all of the triggers that might be in there. Because there are people that have apps on their desktops, and I think there's a couple apps for mobile devices, that will filter out and block things that are tagged with those trigger warning tags. So tagging something with a trigger warning and saying what exactly the trigger warning is really super helpful for people like me who can't even look at, like, certain triggers of mine, like, for example, the spiders. I can't even look at a likeness of a spider, even if it's a cartoon spider, because it triggers my psychosis. So those kinds of things are really super helpful. So in general, ask, be aware. There's no harm in asking, hey, do you have triggers that I need to be aware of? And if some people might not be comfortable sharing their triggers because of the abuse that people take of those triggers. I have sometimes a really hard time telling people what my triggers are because of the past experiences that I've had of people abusing that. And when I say, like, one of my triggers is spiders, and they will just run rampant and talk about spiders, like, incessantly and nonstop, and then I'm in an episode of psychosis. So if somebody is hesitant to say, like, oh yeah, my triggers are ... please be understanding of that, because there's a lot of assholes in the world who don't understand what boundaries are. It's never okay to cross somebody's boundary like that if they say that this is a trigger for them. It's never okay to do that. please don't do that. Please be kind and gentle to the world, because we need more kind and gentle people. So anyway, that's kind of my soapbox spiel about triggers. If you guys have any more questions, let me know in the comments. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys found this helpful, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. See you in the next video.